Welcome back. In this session, I want to talk a little bit more about how to get your volunteers. We've already looked at where to find your volunteers. The most important part, though, is not so much where to find them. That's easy. It's a question of how do you motivate them to want to come and work with you. Now, in the past, most people who want to practice hypnosis have used a variation of the I'm a hypnotist technique, let me hypnotize you. And that can work pretty well, by the way. People get fascinated by hypnosis and they tend to polarize. Some people go, no, I'm afraid, please don't do it with me. Other people go, really, and are fascinated and they want you to work with them. Both attitudes can be very useful. You tend to lose a lot of people when you say that sort of thing just because of the fears involved, the misconceptions with hypnosis. You can turn them around, but it's a bit of work. The reason I am not going to recommend taking that direct approach to you right now is because chances are you've already tried it, and if you're feeling nervous and anxious or afraid, it's purely because that approach creates a certain frame, an expectation of you that you're not ready to live up to yet. And that's where the performance anxiety, the fear comes in. If you tell someone, I'm a hypnotist and I'm going to hypnotize you, suddenly you have to get a result, because if not, then you can't be a very good hypnotist, and then you feel embarrassed, ashamed, you feel like you haven't lived up to your reputation. There's a lot of self-esteem issues involved with that. That's where the fear comes from. And that's why people hold back and go, oh, I don't know if I should start doing or saying this yet. I'm not ready for it yet. If you can hear me right now, if you can understand what I am saying, then you're ready to do hypnosis. Because really all it is, it's a simple guided conversation. It's a guided process to let them go inside. So if I'm not recommending the hypnotist frame to begin with, in time, it's a great frame to come into. Then what would I recommend? What I recommend is you do something that's going to take the pressure off you, put a little bit of performance pressure on them so they're more busy thinking about themselves. I'll explain why when we get to the idea of the critical factor more. And then allows you to get on with your job in a way where there is no specific result required of you. If I tell you I'm a hypnotist, then I've got to try and make your hand stick to the table or the chair. Well, if it works, great, then I'm a hero. If it fails, then I'm a loser. And that's a terrible place to be coming from. So what if instead you said, I'm a hypnotist, but I'm not doing hypnosis today. Today I'm going to be doing some research. I'm doing an experiment on the powers of the mind. Would you care to join me? Now, I don't know where your mind has its strengths. So one of the things we have to do is take you through some exercises to determine where your mind's strengths are and where its weaknesses are. Are you willing to play around? You'll learn a lot about yourselves while you're doing this. So just notice the frame we presented there. I have borrowed the hypnosis frame because it's powerful. It sets you up as an authority. It's a great place to be. At the same time, however, I've now taken that authority off myself again. So whilst I get all the authority of it, all the benefits of that authority, I have none of the risks that are involved with it. I do not have to live up to your expectation of what a hypnotist is, how they talk, what they should be able to do, and so on. More importantly, your mindset as my volunteer will be different now. You see, a lot of subjects have the idea that hypnosis is about thought control. They'll take over your mind in some ways. It can be a useful attitude at times and a terrible attitude at other times. So, rather than having someone sit there and try too hard or try and resist you to fight you because that's what they think that should be going on, or to prove something to themselves by making you fail, if they think, I now have a stronger mind than the hypnotist, that's why it's going to fail. These are all terrible frames to be coming from. By switching it around from a I'm going to do something to you framework to we're going to explore something as a framework. What's an exploration? Well, what does that require? First of all, there is a cooperative approach. You need to listen to me because I'm going to help you succeed even more. To allow that to happen, of course, you are now under a little bit of performance anxiety, a little bit of pressure. It's all about how well you respond. I don't want too much of this because if you don't respond so well, you might end up having issues as a volunteer, or my mind might not be very good. Maybe I'm not a very bright person. Maybe I'm not this or not that. That's a terrible place to leave someone, especially given that is not correct. So, by putting it as a cooperative frame, we're going to explore your mind. We're going to discover where its strengths are and where some of its weaknesses are. These are all things that are actually true. and there's no pressure on you now. The pressure is on them, and even then, it's a very minimal pressure. They're performing, but because there's no clear result expected of them, how can they fail? How can you fail when there's no clear result expected of you? That's what research is all about. That's why the experimental frame or the research frame is such a powerful place to be coming from. It takes all the risk of hypnosis away. The result becomes irrelevant. No matter what happens, it's a good result at that point. Then it's just a question of working with the person and building on their strengths and encouraging them about growing through their weaknesses as well. So that's one idea, the experimental approach or the research approach. What might be another approach, another frame that you can present to them? Here's a great idea, one that I did myself when I first started. It's sneaky, it's beautiful, I love this one. It's a beautiful frame to come from. I call it the please help me frame. Essentially, you're going to say to someone, I am a hypnotist, but I'm just starting out. So you're borrowing some of the mystique, some of the authority, but then you're taking the risk away. So I'm just starting out, I'm just learning the ropes here. It would be really useful to me if I could do some exercises with you just to practice. And don't worry, nothing's expected of you. All I need you to do is just to go along with it, just pretend that you're having fun or doing something interesting. And that allows me to do my job, just get used to it. You know what I mean? Now look what you've just done here. What you have suggested to someone is, first of all, I'm a hypnotist. It ups your authority. But I'm just learning it. It diminishes the risk. So you're not quite as high as before, but it still has a wonderful impact in terms of the frame that you've presented. Now, by inviting your volunteer to assist you, to help you, you have once again prevented the combat frame, the one where I have to prove to you that my mind is stronger than yours, Mr. Hypnotist, and you created the cooperation frame. I will work with you. I'm going to help you out by being your practice partner. The third thing that we've done is we've taken, once again, all performance risk out of it. How? Well, you're not going to be hypnotizing anyone, at least as far as they're concerned. All I need to do is to rehearse, to do a dry run of the different procedures or the mental warm-ups, so that when you get back to class, they're easy for you. You've practiced them and so on. Now, they're not going to be evil to you. They're not going to be bad people and try and make you mess up. If they're that kind of person, chances are they won't even volunteer for you if you ask them to. If you're asking for a volunteer to help you out, they will help you out. And if they're there in that mindset of, oh, I'm just rehearsing this, I'm doing a dry run, I'm just pretending to go into a trance, well then consciously their mind, their attention is not fully in what's going on, but you still have their unconscious attention. And that's all that we really need. So having someone rehearse hypnosis, having someone pretend hypnosis will usually convert into full-blown hypnosis if, and this is the important part, if you follow your procedure step by step and you have your 4 key principles, the hypnotic context, the ABS formula, and you're following through them step by step. Once you open the door into trance and you invite people through that doorway and they're in this threshold and you've created an opportunity for the unconscious mind to present itself and express itself, you have hypnosis. Whether they realize it or not, you will have it. Hence, the rehearsal frame or the let's pretend or help me practice frame, beautiful. Another really simple way of getting a volunteer with zero pressure. There are a couple of other approaches that you can take. These ones are still relatively low risk. However, there is more risk involved in those first 2. I'd like to share them with you now anyways, just so you have a complete picture. However, I don't want you to think that this is something you have to do. Because there's a slight increase in the risk, there'll be a slight increase in the pressure, which means you may have a slight increase in the anxiety levels. So this is something that's good for you to evolve towards, but not necessarily a place you want to start in, especially if you already have some concerns or fears and so on about practicing hypnosis. So the 3 frames I have in mind here is, number 1, I call the magic moment frame. Essentially, you do a little hypnotic demonstration with someone or a little mind game with someone, and in doing so, they go, wow, this is amazing. And then you say, well, if you want more, come back, and I've got a whole bunch of these things I need to do with people, as part of my hypnotic practice, you'll help me, and of course you'll learn more about yourself as you're doing it. So it's more of a dicey way to get volunteers. The actual activity itself is very simple. You just find a simple psychological game to play with people. I'll give you some examples later on. And for those of you who've got the mind game magic cards or the masterclass and so on, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about already. Essentially, you're going to give them a simple taster, a little demonstration of some light, low-level hypnosis, something like the dictionary balloon game or something like that. We'll cover that in the later portion. And once they've had a taste of it, you invite them back for some more. It's much more motivating than the other two frames because they've already had a taster, but the risk goes up a little bit because you're doing something. The next one is one that I got from a hypnotist friend of mine. It's a genius idea. It's a lot of fun to do, but it depends on your personality whether or not you will want to do this as a low-risk approach. What he would do is he would run around university campus, he was a student at this time, with a big book and had the word hypnosis printed in big, bold letters on the front. Now, I have no idea whether or not he ever read this book. Personally, I doubt he ever did. The reason for having this book was not to read what's in the book. It's so you could stand around in the university library, the university coffee shop, on the university grounds, with this big book and the words just hanging out there. And people would look at it and go, oh, wow, that's really fascinating. And he goes, yes, it is. Do you do hypnosis? Well, actually, yes, I do. In fact, I'm doing a research project on hypnosis right now. If you'd like to take part, come down on this day and this time, and you can be part of that. Now, think about what that does. First of all, their status, their authority position has risen right up. Secondly, well, students are renowned for being curious, intellectually curious about things, trying new experiences out and so on. So it's a great, in fact, those of you who've done any kind of stage hypnosis shows or anything like that, you will know that working with a student, a college level, university level student, they are some of the easiest people to do hypnosis with because their mindset is perfect for hypnosis. Not too rigid, smart, alert, and ready to kind of engage in the process. So with this little hypnosis book trick, you can get to intrigue them, pull them in, get that conversation rolling, and then set up an actual time to practice with them later. Now, the final frame that I want to present to you in this category is the seminar frame. This is wonderful, but once again, it lifts the level of anticipation. It lifts the risk that you're taking another little notch. What do I mean by the seminar frame? Once again, let's say you're at your night class that's doing your art class, or maybe you're at a health food shop and you have a chat to them about this. You say to them, well, actually, yes, I'm a hypnotist. I'm actually running a small seminar, like a half-day seminar on the power of the mind. If you want to take part, be part of the class, it's free, it's my service to the local community. Come on down and enjoy yourself. Now, the reason this frame is particularly powerful is because not only are you a hypnotist, you're a hypnotist with so much authority, you now get to teach seminars about the subject. Of course, because you put yourself up on that higher pedestal, the risks that you're running are a little bit higher as well, which means the pressure on you is a little bit higher. Now, because you said it's a seminar rather than a hypnosis session, because you're going to teach them about the powers of the mind rather than hypnotizing them, the pressure is lower than actually doing hypnosis, because you don't have to deal with all those extra issues about what is hypnosis, how does it work, am I in a trance now, I don't know, and so on. You can bypass all those things because you're teaching them about the mind at this point. And then, when they come together, you have a room full of people, maybe 2, maybe 5, maybe 10, maybe 100, who knows? You have your room full of people, and you can get a little presentation. Here's the power of the mind, here's some cool things hypnosis has done, and so on. And then, this is the key part, you get to do the exact same sessions that you saw me do earlier on, and which I will be breaking down for you step by step later on in this training sequence. You'll do exactly the same sessions with them, in exactly the same kind of order, learning exactly the same lessons. However, because your authority is higher, because you're on that higher pedestal now, having been a seminar leader, their responses will be that much more powerful, because their unconscious mind has a greater expectation, which means it will respond with that much more power for you. So, the risk goes up a little bit, but the rewards and the results go up with it as well. So there you have it. You have the fundamental frames that will allow you to present hypnotic exercises to people by diminishing your risk at the same time. You diminish the risk, that means your anxiety levels also diminish because you have nothing to prove.